Why Wells Win is live. It's streaming to all the right places. Lloyd Brown, how are you, brother?
Steve, I'm living in a dynamic world, and it's a lot of fun.
Are we not all living in that same place?
Absolutely.
What's cool is we have all this information happening and all these opportunities. Kind of the theme of our time at the moment is there are all these expectations that are available that we didn't know we had before. And that kind of segues into our topic, actually, is peak initial production killing your well. And there's a mindset in the industry that your initial production max equals success. And today you wanted to talk about that and hopefully think about this different.
Yeah, used to peak IP was how companies proved their acreage and they sold it. And so, when we were in the middle, let's say 2015, 16 to 17, there was a lot of acreage, and even earlier than that, there was a lot of acreage sold based on peak initial production. And one of the things that we've been learning is a lot of companies are looking at and determining the success of a well based on when that peak initial production comes online. And that's when they do their calculations on what the estimated ultimate recovery is. And what we've discovered, especially wells using our process, they're slower to hit peak IP and they're slower in the decline curve. And those two things, if you're only looking at a 6 or 9 month window, when we go back and we do our studies and they're running 24, 36, 48 months, we're consistently outperforming. And we're less of a peak in a valley and we're more of a parabolic curve. And that's a multitude of reasons why our wells win. And we can visit about that.
So initial production, we want to get that spike as high as the apex is far up, because that the thinking would be that the decline curve would be better in the long term if based on that. And what
no that it was just the decline curves have been steep in resource geology and shale geologies. The paradigm has been the rate of decline has been at a much higher rate than what we've discovered our wells are. And that's been uniform across the industry. And so when companies have been able to do their reservoir calculations on what their estimated ultimate recovery on these wells based on measuring a 6 or 9 month window and then putting that into their formula. Our wells don't work in that because we're reaching the same, if not higher, initial production heights. However, it's taking longer to get there, and our decline curve is much lower. And one other discovery that we found is our total recovered both liquids and gas is significantly more over that time frame. So water, oil, and gas on in excess of 90% of the wells in the thousands that we've studied and the close to 1,000 refined wells. That's been a consistent measurement that we've discovered. And that's why our wells from a production standpoint win. Another thing is because of our patents, we're producing in that same time frame 90% less CO2, 90% less H2S. And actually the H2S numbers are in excess of 90%. And that is because we're keeping the geology stable. It's another reason why we get more total fluid back in both hydrocarbons, water, and gas and gas liquids. And that's why that longer curve, that longer to hit peak IP, and then a much lower decline curve is why our wells are winning. And then you've got the other compounding benefits of that.
So, all right, you correct me if I'm wrong. Let me work my understanding of your model here. So, the lever that was expected that you did have control over was from that 30 to 90-day period, and the lever of the decline curve was always just accepted that it's a typical decline curve that you would put in behind that. And what you're saying is now, wait a minute, there's expectations that you can have that you didn't have before, that actually that decline curve is much longer, and we can impact that longer version way more than you expected, which changes the whole conversation that you have with your shareholders with the promises that you're keeping. Wrong?
Well, that's correct. And so what it means is the estimated ultimate recovery goes up for that well and every well that uses our process.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a balance sheet change in the value of what the promise that the company can deliver to their shareholders, it increases. So that's a major economic impact. And that's one of them.
Yes. All right. So now there's another lever that we're leaning on, and that's your lease operating expenses based on your patented Pathfinder process.
That's correct. And the impact on that is the amount of CO2 and H2S that have to be scrubbed from the gas and the oil streams drop dramatically. And so there's a cost that can be 30 cents to 80 cents per million cubic feet of gas that they're being charged to remove that from the stream. And we completely remove that from the process because we've left it in the geology. We're not allowing it to be converted from a mineral into a gas.
Yeah.
And that lowers the corrosion, and that lowers the amount of corrosion, scale, and emulsions. And so that compounding impact on the lease operating expense of that well, in addition to it's producing more total fluid, has a dramatic impact on the dollars per barrel lease operating expense. It drops it dramatically.
So there you go. That's lever number two that we didn't have to lean on in the previous expectations of this reality, right?
And one thing that going back to the original, there's a balance sheet change, but there's a massive change in operating cash flow that you're getting from the well for a much longer period of time. And one of our discoveries is our customers are able to leave their ESPs and gas lift in the well anywhere between 60 and 120 days longer before they have to go to rod pump, because they're able to continue and they maintain the high volumes of total fluid coming out of the wellbore, and means that the wells are that's another indicator that the wells are having a much lower decline, because the hydrocarbon in the water is not being trapped with barriers in the outside of the wellbore.
So, our title is a peak initial production equals success. You would change that to say peak long term?
Well, I don't think peak. I think it's just changing the calculation based on where we've been. Peak IP is still an important measurement, but using the same calculation for the rate of decline is not. And the assumption of getting up to that peak IP earlier in the production of a well, because again, you're wanting that, you want to pay these wells off as fast as you possibly can because of the severity of the decline curve and the amplification as the wells produce less and the operating expenses stay the same or go up, the profitability goes down over time. And so what we're elongating the profitability of the well is much longer, and it stays in a lower and slower decline than what is typically seen in the wells. And so it's a multitude effect, and you just have to show it and what those look like, because it's amazing.
So this typical acceptance of this decline,
and it's been the truth. It's been right.
Exactly. But now it's like, hey, wait a minute, we don't have to accept this. But here's how, or here's why. You call it the rock is the boss. And so why we're doing this in the previous reality, one size fits all. But in the new reality, the new expectations they have, the rock is a boss. Why do you say that?
Well, if you understand what it needs to stay stable, it's kind of like in any relationship, right? If you understand what's bringing stability to the relationship, that's what you want to do, right? Good relationships have good boundaries. They have there's a lot of communication about what are our needs. And guess what? The beautiful part is the rock will tell us what it needs. We have to, number one, listen and learn, because we can't treat it all the same. It's kind of like we're both last name's Brown, and we're not brothers from another mother, even though we have the same name. And that's the same thing we've learned. You can have wells that are a Wolfcamp B and they're 12 miles apart, and what that rock wants is different for each one of them. Just because they share the same last name doesn't mean that they have the same wants and needs.
Right.
And so that's what our process does, is every well and the geology that it's drilled in is the boss of, and that's what we're looking at to maximize the return.
I was thinking about you guys that this week the news came out about Moderna had used artificial intelligence to study each unique individual person, and they had a process where they would take your data and they drop it in here, assuming you had melanoma, and then it would not design a one-size-fits-all process. It would take all of these things into consideration and come up with a unique formula that they would apply to the treatment of that melanoma. And I was thinking about you guys, you're doing a similar process, and it was like big giant news, and totally the stock market, just their price went up 3 times, but yet that's what you guys are doing.
It's very, very similar. Absolutely. I mean, the mineral complexities is the DNA of each one of these. And it's given us the ability to understand and continue to learn more. And then, in mathematics, a constant is an important part of solving problems, right? And one of the biggest constants is pi. Do you remember what pi is, what the number is?
Yeah, every Thanksgiving I remember what pie
Yeah,
is.
there you go. Well, that's the beautiful part about our two patents is we made discoveries of constants. And because of that, we're able to solve the equations. And those constants give us the ability to have visibility if we're able to put our geology in dynamic equilibrium, which the definition of that is where we maintain the stability of the geology, minimizing and mitigating the production of CO2 and H2S while allowing the liquid and gas hydrocarbons to migrate into the wellbore. That's
Mhm.
dynamic equilibrium. Equilibrium means if it's not dynamic and we can keep it in equilibrium, but then you don't have any mobility of your hydrocarbons. And so understanding that based on the DNA of the rock, we're able to maximize that.
Yeah. When I learned about the dynamic equilibrium, I've always explained it this way when I'm talking about what you guys do, but the rock in its natural state is just equilibrium, static equilibrium. And then the fracking process inserts all this chaos, and then things happen like they happen, and it tries to go back to static equilibrium, which means what? It's stopping the flow of what you put it into dynamic, right? And so you have these competing forces going on that's in play. So dynamic equilibrium is when you're able to know the DNA and you're able to manage those competing forces and keep them in dynamic equilibrium. Then the release of the hydrocarbons is successful, and therefore your decline curve. That's why your decline curve is able to stay stronger longer.
That's right.
All right. So
And when you said stronger, longer, I was hearing a commercial on TV, but we're not hymns.
That's funny. Yeah.
But we are.
But really, you're wanting this well to be robust. You're wanting it to produce and not have.
Yeah, and it's about keeping the
arteries.
pathways open,
Yeah.
so you're able to recover the resource.
Yeah.
And we know, and we discovered why we're able to do that.
So, and then we patent this process. So that's why you're able to introduce these new realities that didn't exist before.
That's right.
And we haven't even talked about one that we're teasing that we'll talk about soon. But those are two levers that you didn't know you could lean on in this process. If you're approaching this and keeping promises to your shareholders, oh my goodness. So when you guys design for the life of the well, you're looking at not only just the unique geology, but you're looking at how they run the operations and some of the things that they're wanting to accomplish as well. I always see you guys as not just solving this problem, but you're also bringing in other capabilities for their business to flourish from what you guys are doing.
Well, and have stability. One of the things, Steve, that we all are, and every day Trump and Vance and everybody's talking about, we're going to have pain for a little while, and then the price of oil is going to come down, and so is gas and diesel, and that's true. There will be a peace dividend, and the economic reality is the price of hydrocarbon will more than likely decrease significantly. And what we are able to do is to make sure that the profitability of the well lasts longer. Growing up and entering the industry in the late 1980s and going into a world where, oil was $8 a barrel and natural gas was 60, 50 cents. I mean, we had to squeeze every penny of cost out of every well that we could. Well, that shaped me. That really created an understanding of how we create stability for the long term. And it's to pay attention. And when we make an investment, we do it with the understanding that we need to stay manage those costs over the life of the well. And that's been part of our methodology for all these years. And understanding, hey, it's better to invest a little more up front because it's going to give us the stability over the long period of time.
Love it, because when I think about that, prices go high, and so you're making decisions on how to manage these wells in one way. But when prices go low, then there's another set of decisions that need to be applied in that environment. And in a way, you guys are offering us an option to help them be in dynamic equilibrium as well. You're giving them more options to run more efficiently and stay more prepared for whatever the situation is. High prices.
Absolutely.
All right.
I want to call it capital effective and efficient.
Capital effective and efficient. Bringing dynamic equilibrium to the rock, to your process, to your company. Lloyd Brown, look what you're doing, man. You're revolutionizing your industry.
That's the goal. That's our purpose.
Why wells win. So Lloyd, how somebody's listening, they want to talk to you to get some more, as the cool kids say, details.
Yeah. Lloyd at Refined C Lloyd B, right there. You can hit me up on X, on YouTube, and or on LinkedIn via that way, or my email address is lloyd.brown@refinedcompletions.com. And then, of course, you can go to our website, refinedcompletions.com. Or if you're really tech savvy, go up to that little cool QR code and open that up, and it'll give you a link to get right in touch with us. But and by the way, Steve, you guys do a really great job of helping us engage and communicate, and I appreciate all you guys do.
Love it. It's important, and it's a big deal. We're changing industry, aren't we?
That's right.
All right, glad to be a part of it. It's fulfilling. All right, reach out, talk to Lloyd, start this conversation. Let's make next year a big deal. We got time. Why wells win. We'll see you again next week at the same time. And that's a wrap.